Welcome back to our Carinine, in which we've been discussing the economy of the Bahamas and making some suggestions about the way forward in terms of the kind of economy we would like to build is one in which a majority of Bahamians would not only be employed, but many of them will be involved as leaders in business community and playing an active role in the development of our economy and not simply be passive recipients. And for that to happen, we are saying that the majority of the responsibility has to fall on the government to create the environment in which this type of expansion can take place. But in this short final segment, I think we need to emphasize the other side, the responsibility of the Bahamian citizen, that we certainly, if we want to improve in our economy, we must become more productive. We have to create a culture of responsibility.
Yes, we do.
Responsibility and accountability, but if not just for workers in hotels, but the average workplace, wherever it is,
Sure.
people must be producing quality work
You know,
and
Archbishop,
giving quality service.
you're absolutely right. I mean, I think a lot of people go to work with the attitude that I've got a job and I'm going to do what I need to do from 9 to 5, and nothing more and nothing less. There are a lot of people who have that attitude. There are a lot of people who have the attitude, I'm going to give my best. And sometimes their colleagues or their peers say, well, why are you working so hard? Why are you trying? You're trying to show us up, you know. And so it's critically important for Bahamians to do the best they possibly can. In terms of productivity, I think that I would suggest that we really seriously consider changing the way we operate as a country, the way that we function as a country. Can you imagine how many thousands and thousands of employees are on the road between 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the afternoon doing the school pickup? Collecting
children
kids
from school.
You know, and I think maybe the church, in some instances, have to play a role in this. The schools certainly do. The ministry ought to. Why shouldn't our kids stay in school from 9 to 5 like the parents do? And that way, when you finish school, you finish work, you finish school, you can go home and pick up the kids and go home. And that way, it gives you probably at least another hour and a half of productivity for the work that you're doing. It also gives our students another hour and a half of school time. And so I don't know that we have really thought this thing through very clearly. We've always done it this way. I'm not quite sure why it was done that way. There was a time, for example, when St. Augustine's used to have classes from 8 in the morning to 8 at night. But I'm not suggesting that. But what I am suggesting is that we ought to find a way where we rethink, reconsider the way that we do business, the way that we conduct our affairs, and maybe have the parents, okay, if you have to leave work at 5, school comes in at 5, so the parents will pick you up at 5:30. For those students who are involved in extracurricular activities, they can work, they can do whatever they need to do. That doesn't change the formula at all. But it just seems to me that we haven't really taken the time to rethink how do we tweak our system. How do we change it in a way that's going to be more productive for us all?
And more beneficial.
That's right.
Because in addition to, I think, the radical work we must do on the public educational system, a sociological problem will be at least partly resolved if children are not going home
by themselves.
with their kids. I mean, if you have them in a controlled environment,
exactly.
then the last 2 hours may be devoted to what we call homework. Doing that.
Precisely.
And we need to have a new arrangement with the teachers in terms of how they are. But I mean, it's not something that's all that difficult to organize.
No, it isn't.
What is necessary is to have the willpower to really work at it.
That's correct. That's
and
right.
It certainly has tremendous benefit in terms of helping to improve the quality of the educational system, and also can help families in many, many respects.
I agree.
And also produce a more productive and responsible attitude towards the work, but also towards the family life.
That's right.
You could get far better organized. But again, it is the willingness to have the courage to do things that are properly thought through and all aspects of it looked at. But it isn't something that is all that difficult to organize.
It isn't that difficult to organize. And I think there are other aspects of our lives that we can do the same thing with. You know, we just happen to take on an attitude that this is how it's always done, and therefore that's the way we're going to continue to do it. For example, flexi hours. Increasingly, you see more and more firms affording, or larger firms anyway, affording the employees the ability to come in at 8 o'clock and leave at 4, or come in a little later and leave a little later. And I think, you know, what we have to do in this country, if we want to decide how do we make this country the best country, is to assess all of those major activities in which we're engaged. Ask ourselves, are we doing this the best way that we can? Is there not a better way to do it? And can we persuade those who have the ability to make the change to do so, to have the will to do so? It's not only political.
Have the will to do so.
The will has a lot to do with it.
My sermons, I quote from St. Augustine quite
Yes.
often. He happens to be my favorite saint.
Yes, he's wonderful.
But, you know, he talks about the way to a God is not in chariots, not in ships, but the way to him is the will to go.
That's correct.
And we lack the will in so many instances. And it does seem to me a matter, going back to the economy, I hear the cry from some persons that if you raise the minimum wage, you will force people to get laid off. But how can you, with a good conscience, say you are in business and are not prepared to pay people more than $150 a week?
Exactly.
No one can live on that.
You know,
it is just, to me, it's just unreasonable. If you can't afford it, you shouldn't be in the business.
That's right. Exactly. That's right.
But you should not operate a business on the back of people.
No,
You are really taking advantage of people to force them to work for that kind of money.
Well, even government recognizes that a minimum wage of 175 is the lowest acceptable level, and I'm not quite sure, quite frankly, how people manage on 175. But be that as it may, again, we need to reassess, take stock of where we are as a country, in my opinion, and make a determination of what are we going to do, what things are we going to do to make it a better country. One of the things we've got to do is to compensate people adequately. Give them a fair wage. But at the same time, the citizen, the employee must recognize that he has a responsibility to his employer to give the best that he can for the time that he's employed.
But it really is a justice issue.
It is very much
in terms
so.
of how people are treated.
It is very much so a justice issue.
And if we wish to make our country a better country, if we wish to have a stronger economy, the justice issue must be prominent, right?
Yes, it must.
Because unless we deal with people fairly, we will be creating additional social ills and discontent in the body, the whole not just political, but the whole national
body,
life is impacted negatively.
Indeed.
So I'm afraid we've run out of time. But
it goes so fast.
So much more we could talk about. But thank you for coming, and I do hope that our viewers would appreciate what we've been trying to say about how we can build a better economy here in the Bahamas.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Good night, and God bless to our viewers.